It absolutely does. And I'm actually struck by this distinction that Peter Navarro is making between accusations that he and Steve Bannon played a role in the violence that took part that day, as opposed to whatever this was. And it's interesting to me because these are two sides of the same coin, right? I mean, this House Select Committee that's investigating the events of January 6th aren't just looking at the mob that attacked the Capitol. They're also looking at this attempt to rip apart the fabric of our republic using the legislative branch. And what we've got here is Peter Navarro saying, look, me and Steve Bannon, we had nothing to do with the violence. In fact, it didn't work in our favor because it stopped us from doing what we really wanted to do, which was stop the certification of President Biden's win, right? But here's the thing. The way to think about this is there was clearly an attempted coup, right, with that attack on the Capitol, but that's the hard coup. Some have called this other effort the soft coup. And what we have here is a former active White House official saying that while he was in the administration, was actually using his power there to put this into play, which I think is absolutely fascinating.
So, Jose, I think it's important to take a step back because, you know, Peter talks a lot and he runs his mouth a lot, but who he is and how close he, in fact, was to Donald Trump. He's a guy that Trump saw on Fox News, like so many of his advisors, and says, I like the way he talks about me, bring him into the White House. How influential was he? How close was he to Donald Trump as a key figure, in fact, in trying to overturn this election?
I think that has yet to be determined, and it's one of the questions that this January 6th committee might want to dive into, because in his book, and while talking to me, he made clear that his role at the White House during the final weeks of the Trump administration was in documenting what they claimed to be election irregularities, right, which, as we all know, did not exist on a widespread scale, but this is something that they were trying to push. Now, how close he was to the president is unclear, but when I asked him whether the president was on board, he was emphatic about saying, well, absolutely. He was absolutely on board with this. You can see it in his speech and in his actions. There is something interesting, though, which is that in his book and in his conversation with me, Peter Navarro makes clear that that warm relationship between him and the president did not exist between him and Vice President Mike Pence, who he felt was really pushing him back and brushing him aside, not letting him have the type of time he wanted or the audience he wanted with the vice president, who ultimately was going to make the decision to certify these votes.
Claire, it almost turns your stomach all over again to hear Peter Navarro talking with such pride about an attempt to overturn a presidential election, describing it in terms of a football metaphor, the Green Bay sweep. That's actually the way Steve Bannon also was talking about it, saying, Mike Pence, we are right on the cusp of victory. This was right around January 6th. It's quite simple. The play's been called. Mike Pence, run the play. Take the football. This was a well-thought-out plan.
No question about it. And I do agree that in some ways, the violence of January 6th served to mask the more insidious part that was going on behind the scenes. And the fact that there are people that served in a presidential administration that are bragging about wanting to overturn the votes of the American people to seize power is chilling. I mean, everybody kind of knew that Navarro was kind of the nut in the cabinet. I mean, other people in the cabinet even said to me, he's an outlier. Well, as it turns out, those outliers came in really handy when you want to try to overturn an election. I'm curious in your reporting, you talk about that Navarro bragged about 100 congressmen. I think that we forget the senators who voted to overturn the election. We remember Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, but there was also Cindy Hyde-Smith. There was also the new senator from Kansas and Tuberville, the football coach who poses as a United States senator from Alabama. And all of these congressmen, do we have a list? Is this available anywhere? Is this something that we can begin to show more light around the people who were in power, who wanted to seize power?
Okay, so that's a great question. I don't have that list. And when I asked Mr. Navarro to talk to me about who he spoke with, he seemed reticent to do so. I think at that point he might have been realizing, oh, no, I may have said too much. But, the book and in his conversation with me, he details how he got text messages from Steve Bannon. He woke up to messages from people who were on board with this plan, and he was in communication with them that morning before a morning run around the National Mall. And so, look, it's right there. If the committee investigators want to look into this, I mean, the guy's saying he's got communications. And as far as we know, he hasn't been subpoenaed yet or asked to turn over documents. That very well might change after this reporting.